about my favorite part. When you come to Buddhism, it's the first thing that you're taught. All of life is suffering. God, it's so depressing, isn't it? Next thing you're taught is everything's impermanence. Okay, that's not really reassuring. And then, halfway through Zen class, the foundational beginner's class, you hear about no self. And half of the students disappear. It's too unsettling. Because we've grown up with this perception, under this reality, that there is a self. Me. And when the Buddha said the self doesn't exist, what does it mean?
There's nothing you can actually point to that you are in control of that is permanent, that is you.
Right. So psychology is trying to figure out the self for how long now? And the Buddha points it out in a very interesting story. Story of Nagasena and the King Malanda. Who have read that story? Really good story. So King Malanda comes to Nagasena and says, I heard that you have the great teachings of the Buddha. And Nagasena says, and he's just a regular monk. Now, how did you come here? And the king says, I came on a chariot. Nagasena says, what is the chariot composed of? The king says, well, it's got wheels, it's got axles, it's got, ropes and things, and you put on a horse and you pull it, and that's a chariot. And he says, is the wheel the chariot? No. Is the axle the chariot? No. Is the whip and the horse the chariot? No. None of that is a chariot. And how could you say the chariot exists if I take on one of those things off? So the self is like that. The Buddha says it's comprised of a combination of things that flows together. It's impermanent. It's constantly in a state of flux. But we like to think that it's permanent. We think that it has substance. We want to believe that it has substance. So we live as if it exists. But it doesn't. You see, my koan for many, many years, 13 years, was who am I? It seems straightforward, right? If I ask you, who are you? Who are you? The answer is, what's the first thing that happens?
Name.
Your name. When I was a kid, I noticed something really curious. People were given names. So I was given a name, a Vietnamese name. Huon, it's mysterious. That's what it means. And then my family gives me a baby name because I was a baby of the family. They call me baby at home. And when I go to schoolyards, my friend teased me, they gave me another name. So I asked my mother, I said, who the hell am I before you gave me a name? Of course, this really shocked my mother. She looks at me, she says, this is a really weird kid. You're you. But you know what? Before you gave me that name that you put on my birth certificate, you pulled this name from somewhere. She says, yeah, your dad gave it to you. I don't like that name very much. But he went and put it on the birth certificate without talking to me. And I said to her, well, if that didn't give me that name, which name would have you given me? And she says, I would have given you the name Gold. And she later named one of my cousin that, because it was her favorite name. I thought I could have been Gold, you know. Instead, I was this dark, mysterious thing. That's what it meant. That's what my name meant. And so I saw that there was something peculiar about that. So when I got to university, of course, when I came to Canada, everybody butchered my name. They couldn't pronounce it properly. So Huyen, such a beautiful name in Vietnamese, became Huyen. Finally, I gave up and I said, I'm just going to pull a name out of a name book that I like, and I'm going to use that one. So Harriet sounds pretty good, and if it's unique, nobody has it. It's a 1930 names, you know. It means strong-willed, and I was pretty strong-willed, so I pulled that name out of the name book, and everybody started knowing me as Harriet. Is that who I am? No. It's not the labels. What about the things that are attached to that label? So what's Huyen? Is she mysterious? No, she's always a little shy. Was she always shy? No. Sometimes she's really shy and she'll go to her cave, and other times she's very gregarious. So then I looked at myself and I thought, I'm not very consistent. So I'm not really shy because I put that label shy on it and it doesn't work. Because there's times where I'm really gregarious and outgoing. Okay, so outgoing doesn't work, shy doesn't work. What next? Happy-go-lucky? Not really. I observe myself, and sometimes I'm really not happy-go-lucky. Matter of fact, I used to have explosive temper. I went from 1 to 10 really quickly. And that's not happy-go-lucky. You know, teenagers, they're kind of imbalanced, you know what I mean? So as a teenager, I've noticed that. I started my colon when I was a teenager. And of course, your personality is not very stable as a teenager. I doubt it's stable right now. So what I've noticed is that there isn't a single label that I can attach on myself that's stuck. Because with the changing experiences, my reaction to things change. My reaction to things change. And I actually change my behavior. I pay attention to things. I used to be a big procrastinator. I would procrastinate, think about things before I do them. My mom would call me lazy. And I said, no, I'm just brilliantly stewing on a resolution. It's true. I will find the shortest way to do something and most efficient way to do something, so I'll sit and think about it. And that's called procrastination. So you see, I lost that procrastination habit when I started working. Why? Because I got deadlines. So I started precrastinating. I would panic about 3 weeks before a deadline. I've noticed that I'm not consistent at all. So my name, it changed. You know, I was born with one name, My friends gave me another name. My mom and my family gave me another pet name. My teacher gave me another name. And Lotus is my Zen teacher's name. Gave me that name. And then I came to Canada and I grabbed a name out of a book. So that label was so changeable. And then I observed myself, my behaviors, my personality on different situations. I react differently. When I'm a good person, I think I'm a good person, I do something bad. I think I'm a bad person. Hey, I'm doing some good stuff here too. So who the heck am I? That's pretty confusing, isn't it? Because when you observe reality, it's constantly in a state of flux. And that's what the Buddha says. There's no self there. There's nothing there because everything that you think is you doesn't stick. You are made up of all this combination of what?
Different factors.
Different factors. Now those 5 aggregates that we talked about earlier. And what about those 5 aggregates? It's constantly changing. Right? Your thoughts, your feelings, your sensation, even your perception. I see myself as a little girl when I was sick, mom not taking care of me. Next thing I realized, oh, wait a minute. I'm not a little girl. I ordered to skip the dishes. I took care of myself and I'm an adult, right? You see, how we frame our perception changes reality, changes who we are. It's not the body we're in, it's up here. Right? So we come to the next part, which is the most subtle part. Who can tell me what that is?
You just described it as our egoic identity earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You described it as our egoic identity earlier, I believe.
It's consciousness.
It's consciousness. The word, though, is used differently. Like consciousness.
There's consciousness and there's personal consciousness. Don't confuse the two.
Okay.
I'm not going to use psychology term, the ego, whatever. It's been misused to death.
Is it awareness?
Okay, what's in it? Describe to me awareness.
Awakening.
Emptiness.
Describe awareness.
Emptiness.
Okay, emptiness. How? Describe me emptiness.
It's more to do with witnessing, isn't it?
It's this knowing. It's this knowing. Right? Did you see that thing flying to you?
Eventually. I don't have my bifocals on.
Okay, he saw that thing flying to you, right? You just knew that without even thinking. Did you have to recognize it's a stick? Or you just kind of knew something's flying at you? Did you have to put a label on it? No. The minute you're recognizing it, there is no need for label to respond to it, isn't it? That's why I said I love traditional Zen teaching because you can throw things at people. Right? And the thing is, if you don't do that, people, you're in your head. You're in your head, you're thinking about concepts. You're not getting out of your head to actually recognize the recognition itself. And you have to notice it. You have to be in that recognition, the doing, to recognize it. Because the talking is concept. Sorry about that.
She's not getting it back, is she?
What?
You haven't learned? You've seen it twice? 3 times?
She hasn't
You're
learned.
just going to arm her.
And that's why traditional Zen teaching doesn't say very much.
Not many books.
There's nothing written about Rinzai Zen. Good luck trying to find it. There's stories about Rinzai Zen master. Is there a teaching about Rinzai Zen? Because it's instantaneous. What happens now? Rinzai Zen teaching is alive. Because consciousness, awareness, does not have labels. Does not wait for you to put labels on and think about it. It flows. You're kind of rusty with the flow thing. Martial artists, right? They flow, right?
I haven't been flowing for a while.
Which brings me to my favorite part. Flow. I know psychology is starting to tap into this. What is flow in Zen? Again, you're seeing the no, right? No? No? Remember Wu?
Mm-hmm.
Doing. Wu Wei. Not doing. Does that mean you sit there and do nothing? Well, when you start, yeah. Because that, you know, the settlement just doesn't settle. Huh? You got all those filters on. There's no clarity. So you have to sit until that thing settles. And when it settles, Wu-Yi comes in. Everything stills. You walk, you talk, you do, but nothing seems to move. You don't perceive anything moving. There's no time. There's no space. There's just this unmoving reality of what is. And it's real. Some of you have experienced it. I know it, because you talked to me. What happened? Seems like we're doing a lot, but not going anywhere. Remember I said about volition earlier? When volition no longer arises, everything comes, no desire arises, you go into the flow.
It's to do with the me disappearing, isn't it?
Yes, it's the me.
Yeah.
Because volition dies down there's not enough energy to sustain the me. See, what sustains the me is volition, is the desire. Wanting things to be different than it is. When you surrender to what is, you accept absolutely what is. And I don't mean accepting what is as, you know, if somebody's hitting you, just sit there. That's it. You move, right? That's the flow. Without thinking, you get out of the way.
Might need one of these.
Do you need volition for that? Anyone who practices martial arts know this. See the fist coming? Oh, fist coming, fist coming. Yeah, right. You're going to get hit in the face. Right? That's why I said Zen people love martial arts for that reason. Spontaneously, things just happen. Without any volition.
It's like, I mean, one of the examples I've used is when one hand gets hurt, the other hand just does that. There's no thinking.
Yeah.
It just does it. Right?
Right.
That's that thing. There's no thought. It doesn't say, shall I do it? Shan't I do it? Just there.
Now you have to be very careful. There's the non-doing of volition, and then there's the train of karmic seeds. That's two different things. Okay? The train of karmic seeds come from what? Wrong perception. That's stored. The non-doing of no volition comes from what?
Consciousness.
That's it. Aware emptiness. So how do you get there? Anyone know how to get there? $1 million question. Because everybody's looking. What?
Drop the self.
Drop the self. How do you drop the self? Sit! Right? This is the optimal experience of being alive. I think Abraham Maslow calls it self-actualization. He got it from somewhere. He was studying these people who were living in the flow. Carl Jung was reading Eastern philosophy, Taoism, Buddhism, Hindu mysticism. And he calls this the process of individualization. These guys are borrowing stuff and they're not acknowledging where it's coming from. Zen and Taoism share a very intimate relationship. Why? Because of the simplicity of Zen. It cuts away all of the book stuff, the concepts, and get right into the doing. Rinzai Zen started from who? Master Rinzai. Anybody comes and asks him a question about what is the truth, he takes a stick out and hits him. What'd you do that for? He takes out the stick, he hits him. Until that person's mind stops. Then they realize there is no mind. There's a place of no mind underlying all manifestation, all existence is inherently aware and all-knowing. And that's what his Buddha nature is. It's what the Buddha calls himself, the Tathagata. Thus have arrived. I am here. That's what that means. Arrive where? Here, in the present. Because when you think about the future and the past, it's not empty, eh? Yes. I love those kids next door, by the way. When you think about the future and the past, it's not empty. It's got very real texture to it. Do you notice that? Usually a charge, too. Yikes! Especially when you're a little bit OCD when I was growing up. I was really OCD when I was growing up. So I worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. I have so much anxiety. Because part of my job is worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. When you try to control the outcome, that's what happens. Then I realize it doesn't exist because I really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, because tomorrow is just a concept. There's only now. There's one long experience of now. So now, tomorrow never comes. And it's very deceptive because, you know, we have a feeling like time is linear. But it's not. So what the Buddha says is, to be awake is to be here. To be aware of here, without the filters. The experience of pure consciousness, of not doing anything, but everything happens. And why did the Taoism call it not doing? Anyone know?
Because there's no preconception.
That's it. There's no volition. Now, I used to go on solitary retreats and I used to practice observing and get into the not doing, you know what? By doing what? By observing myself doing. Did I, observing myself, did I will myself to stick my hand out and take that? Or did it just happen? Well, this is the basis of Tai Chi. When you first learn Tai Chi, it's very deliberate, right? You have to think your hand going there. You have to think your foot going there. Yoga too, anything. The intention goes first before your hand or your foot goes. What is that? It's volition. To get to that, we have to drop volition. Be capable of doing things without intention. That's hard. No, it's actually not. You keep observing yourself doing stuff, you will notice the volition. And when you notice the volition, you will feel the tension in your body reacting to that volition. You'd be so surprised how much tension you hold in your body. Yes?
Does volition rise from ego and wu-wei rise from prajna?
Wu-wei doesn't rise. It's always there. It's the underlying reality of all things. It's the very basis where everything comes from.
I have a question. When you're in the flow state, you still do in fact have
all the or the, like things like thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different experience.
It just, you don't identify with it. So those things become a tool. The thoughts become a tool. The perceptions become a tool. Everything that bugs you before, like your sensations and things like that, they all become a very good tool. Except you can put it down. Try putting your thought down and stop it. Oh my God, no, right? Well, what happened when you really wake up? And you get good at this flow thing? Thought doesn't happen when you got nobody to talk to. It's calm like a pond. You know what happens? You become really boring to the outside world. You don't watch TV anymore. You don't go on the internet anymore. You don't fidget with your phone anymore. People start calling you boring and stoic. Because you're no longer seeking sensations and seeking pleasure. There's an inherent pleasure in the flow of not doing. You can be sweeping the floor and really enjoying it. Picking up my dog's poop. It's not just doing the things you love. It's doing everything. It's loving everything. You know what? The Buddha found that. Zen master is teaching it. This is it. This is the key to well-being.
It's that thing, isn't it? Before enlightenment, washing dishes and all that. Before enlightenment, after enlightenment, but there's nobody doing it.
Yeah. Because there's no ownership so much, of what's happening. That's why I said there are Zen teachers, but there is no Zen. There's Zen teaching, but there's no Zen teachers. Why?
Nothing there.
Because there's no, you know what, the self doesn't exist. Now he gets the joke. It never exists to begin with. So what is awareness then? It's going to be a little bit scary when I tell you this. Awareness is not personal. It's not personal. It's formless. It doesn't have a definition. It's not personal. And that's why sometimes you get these weird experiences when you're in a state of flow. Yes?
Is it collective?
Yes. It's when you say the word collective, you assume that there's many things that puts together. It's not. It's just this one big emptiness.
So would you say it's universal instead of collective?
It's what holds the universe.
When you say universal, you assume there's things that are not universal, right? So we're dealing with duality here. I think the words are pretty hard, right? And that's why the Buddha doesn't even care to define it. He just says the end of suffering. So when you don't see suffering anymore, you're there. Right? So he calls it the absence of something. He doesn't want to define it because you throw a concept out there, somebody's grabbing on and making it something. That is not it.
I just know that it's there before this body was born, and it will be there when this body's not there either.
And how do you know that? I don't know how I know that. I just know.
I don't know how I know that, but I knew when I was 18.
Right. So it's inherently here's all the definition of suffering. Absence of that is it. It's a good definition. You know why? Good pointers. Because you keep looking at yourself, you go, are you suffering? Yeah. Are you suffering? Still suffering? That's not there. Excellent pointers. So instead of defining it to be something, he tells you, if suffering is absence, that's it. That's easier than trying to grasp it with a concept, which you ultimately going to get it wrong. Because it's not conceptual. But suffering, now you can put a finger on that. Right? That was my pointers for many, many, many years. You can put a finger on suffering, for sure. So if that's not there anymore, that's it. You hit the jackpot. Not doing. Nothing's happening. We've got some time left. Okay. So, why do we practice?
And suffering.
That's it. When people come to me and ask me to teach the meditation, I said, I'm not teaching you suffering management because that's not Zen. I read a book, with Richie Davidson. He did a really good job researching into this stuff. And he classified 4 types of meditators. The first type is the one who sits for 15 to 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day. He calls the people who want to manage anxiety. Right? The mindfulness meditators managing anxieties, he says. Helps deal with depression, anxiety, pain. The manager of suffering. So they do it for mental health. Do it for relaxation. The next batch of meditators, he said, they're a little more serious. They go to retreats, they make a commitment, they meditate every day, maybe half an hour to an hour, they take spiritual classes, they align themselves with a spiritual tradition or teacher, and they're coasting along, and they're on the next level of committed practitioner, who's also managing suffering. But they're a lot happier, right? Because they got less anxiety. They rarely experience depression. The next group of meditators are the one who's really serious. They devote their whole life to it. Crazy people like me. They make their practice something central to their being. And they become teachers. They probably got about 10 to 20,000 hours of cushion time. And the next batch of people are the Olympians, the gurus that goes into the mountains and shut themselves for years and years and years and meditates. That's my teacher. 40,000 hours of meditation. They are the Olympians of meditation, right? So what's the difference between these 4 groups?
Commitment.
Yes. What else? Their brain. He scanned all of their brain. What what he found is like this.
What's the name of this book?
Altered Traits. Yes, Richie Davidson, and what's that guy that did Emotional Intelligence?
Oh,
Anyway,
I know.
two very famous researchers. And Richie Davidson was famous for finding neuroplasticity. Right? Did the same research with meditating monks from Tibetan Buddhism. Anyway, so what they found was that when normal human beings, the group of people that never meditate, when you have a stimulus, and they actually take a pin and prick them. I know it's bad, but people volunteered for this. Right? What happens is they would have this rise in anxiety, right? Or they would tell them they would prick their pin. They would prick them, okay? So before they even have the pin pricked, they would have this rise in anxiety. The anticipation itself is causing this rise in anxiety. Right after the pinprick, rise in anxiety. Anticipation of the pinprick, rise in anxiety. But for these long-term meditators, what happens?
There's less of a rise.
There's no rise in anxiety.
None.
None whatsoever before the pinprick. After the pinprick goes, so it goes up a little bit. They felt the pain, went right down. It was interesting.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like pain tolerance.
Yes, that's why it was, meditation is taught as pain tolerance for people who have long-term pain problems. But you see, moreover, anxiety is psychological pain. It's not just regular physical pain. So say, for example, I show you a really horrible movie. Saw, for example.
You've seen them all.
I didn't see all of it in the whole series, but it is very disturbing, that movie, right? And you feel it in your body. I experiment with everything. You feel it in your body. The rising anxiety, the fear response, the tightness, right? Because it's very disturbing. And I want to see when it rises like that, if I can move it down. So I went into samadhi. Next thing I know, I was watching Saw and it was fine. I felt this tremendous sense of peace. But you know what? I'm not telling you to be psychopaths. Why? Because psychopaths do not have that rise.
Well, they don't have the awareness.
They don't have the awareness. So then it doesn't even register for them. But normal people, it registers and it rises. And monks and meditators, it rises. But we're able to lower it. So the empathy is there. You feel the pain. But you're able to tolerate it better. See, empathy is hard. Why? Because if you see somebody get killed, it's going to traumatize you because you have empathy. You register into it. Your attention's there. You see it. So for most people, how do they deal with that? They're going to avoid it. They avoid it or they numb themselves. So they don't feel it. Because empathy causes emotional pain. When you feel it, you vicariously feel it. So what happens when you practice meditation is you have the ability to feel that and then go, So you still have compassion. Why? because you can sense other suffering. But you're able to maintain your peace in order to do something about it. Whereas your average person, they feel empathetic. What happens? It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
They're avoiding it.
They're traumatized.
They're traumatized. They're avoiding it.
They can't cope with it.
They can't cope. So what do?
Shut down.
They shut down. And then they can't do anything about it. The Buddha just found, and Zen found the perfect system to train us to be decent human beings. Who's in tune, aware, compassionate towards others, towards our environment. Is that special? No. That's just being more human. Better. Well, I would say decent human beings. Can you put somebody like that on a pedestal? No. Why? Because they're not special. It's a skill you learn. The Buddha found that skill. He passed it on. They asked him, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm awake." Is that special? No. Of course, we love to make things special. Right? So we make all these stories up. The Buddha was reborn umpteen times. He's got all these special features that sets him apart from everybody else. If you have flat feet now, they send you to the orthopedics. That's one of the features, by the way.
What about flat feet?
Yeah. One of the special features of the Buddha was he had really flat feet.
Oh, I have flat feet.
I know. You are the Buddha.
I guess so.
You see? So our minds like to make up specialness, but the truth is there's nothing special about the Buddha. I love him to death because of the system that he has found that helped me, helped my teacher, that my teacher passed on to me, and now I'm passing on to you. But he's just a person. There's nothing special about him. He's just a really good psychologist. You see? And if you want to go ahead and find a religion out of that, yes, go ahead. But Zen isn't about a religion. I mean, we wear robes, but the truth is, we're as close to an atheist as you can get. We see the Buddha as a human being. We don't worship anything, including our teachers. I know my teacher is very fallible. He's a human being. He's a complex individual. He's a great guy. He helped me a lot. But he's a human being. Don't idolize people. I don't idolize the Buddha. And that's what Zen is about. A tool that helps us to flow. Practice that helps us to be more decent human beings. Some time ago, Millen called me and he says, "We're all practicing just to be decent human beings, right?" Remember, Millen beat me in 2010, and at that time he has all these ideas about what enlightenment is because he was Hindu.
Yeah, all the laser stuff.
I know.
Don't tell them about that.
Yeah. You know, he had all these ideas about enlightenment. You see, he had a Hindu background. You're gonna sit on this pedestal and you'll be blissed out, and everything will be okay.
Everybody bowing down to you.
Have everybody bowing down to you. And sometimes we, what?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. But you know what? The truth is, I started like that too. We all did, right?
Well, some of us more than others.
So, no, it really calls me and says, we're just practicing to be decent human beings, isn't it? Unfortunately, yes. But it's actually a good place to be. There's nothing special about it. It's just well-being. And you know what? I'll wrap today's up with what they found in positive psychology. So instead of studying the diseases of the mind, they decided 10 years ago that, what we focus on is our reality. We kept focusing on all the dysfunction. Right? So let's focus on what makes people happy and, well. So 10 years ago, they started a branch of psychology called positive psychology. And this professor, Tal Ben-Shahar, he's taught the first positive psychology class in Harvard University. His first class had 8 people. I know. The next semester, he had over 1,000 students. It was the most popular class in Harvard University. And what he found is this. What does it take to have well-being? Number 1, mindfulness. It's kind of like a no-brainer, eh? Number 2, generosity and gratitude. What else? Pain tolerance. Accept painful emotion. The ability to accept painful emotion. What else? Quality time and connection with others. Give lots of hugs. Huh? Regular exercise and simple living. You can't get simpler. Like yesterday I said, you can't get any more simple than eating 1 meal a day and have 3 change of clothes and walking 25 kilometers a day. That's the Buddha's way of living, right? He ate 1 meal a day, got 3 change of clothes that he carries with him, and they walk all day to do arms. So it's like 25K a day. That's a lot of exercise. Right? Can't get simpler than that. You can't exercise more than that. He's fit. More fit than any of us in here. What else did he do? He has a community of monks and nuns that practice together. They're very close together. They share everything together. So he has that connection. What else does he have? Mindfulness, meditation. The ability to have attention here, to be present. And when you're present with your feelings, other people's feelings, what do you have? Compassion. Benevolence. Guess what? The Buddha found the perfect formula for well-being. We started studying it 10 years ago. Right? Any questions?
I don't know if it's really a question, but I find myself just wrestling with how does my regular life fit with a deep commitment to this life?
Oh yes, I love this part. You know what's funny? When you first wake up, you have glimpses of shifts in consciousness, and you get out of this dream, and then suddenly you're going, there's the absolute, and then there's the relative life. I'm sorry, there's no 2 worlds. There's just this. I don't do absolutes and relatives anymore. Why? Because it doesn't exist. There's just this. Your idea of my regular life is just an idea. Because when it's unfolding in the now, it unfolds. There's no my life, there's just this.
Exactly.
you,
Tricky
you,
bastard.
you run up against duality, right? And it's the acceptance that there are these other things, but there is also this.
There's no are these other things. That's just the concept.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no absolutes and relative. It's just here. What's here? When you think about, oh, my regular life, you have to start thinking it. Then you get it too. You gotta start thinking.
Thinking about, well, I might have supper with the family tonight, and well, no, because it's just right now.
It's right
I
now.
don't know.
You don't know if you're gonna have supper. When that now unfolds, then you find out. But that now isn't here. So when we think about my life, doesn't exist. It's all in your head. So when the teacher, the Buddha says, stop becoming. You see the word, becoming? I said, stop becoming. What happens when you become? Thought arises, volition arises.
Yes, there's usually some suffering.
What?
So there's usually some suffering.
There's
when you're
usually some
transition-
suffering?
Yeah, when you're growing and transitioning, yeah.
Well, there's suffering when you think about it, right? When you think about an idea, a concept that you can't reconcile with what's happening now. Because now you're here with me. Where's your family? They don't exist.
I hope they're home. When I get
They're home,
back.
they're home. You don't know, right? Right? But when you're thinking about your family, you're basically splitting yourself apart. You're doing this push and pull there. Right? You're here, but you don't want to be here. So when you're here and you're thinking, my life. Where's my life? There's no my life. There's just here. I know it's very confusing. It's an experience. You have to experience it. Really do practice. Because you want to live in that reality. There's no suffering there. Yeah, so once in a while you can feel a little bit of tingling anxiety and it just goes. It doesn't stay. It doesn't stay long enough to become suffering. What arises in the present is brought to the consciousness, is brought to the light of consciousness, disappears. Because it really has no substance. Richie Davidson found that out. The monks are able to do it. And he says, oh, by the way, not just Richie Davidson. What's his name? There's a guy, a Zen monk. He's also doing research on that. So he brought, not the monks, he brought long-term meditators, people who've meditated for 30 years per se. The meditation teachers.
Have a truck.
No.
No.
Shinzen Young. So he's doing research in that too. So he's bringing the regular meditators in who's living in society. The meditation teachers per se. Who's got 30 years of meditation. So he brings them into his lab. fMRI goes in, studies the same thing. And what he found was, again, they can put themselves into this state. And he calls it rest. But there's another name for it. It's called nirodha. Or the Buddha calls it nirvana. So he hooks all these guys up to these machines to measure all their vitals and puts them in the MRI and tells them, shift into those. You know, when you're an advanced meditator, you get good at shifting into different states. But the underlying reality is there's no state. state changes, but the emptiness doesn't. And that's the underlying reality. And that's what Shinzen Yang found. The underlying reality doesn't have the ups and downs like this. It's just down there. So the people he's measured, they're like this calm pond. And they have ripples once in a while when they have experiences. And they come back, become ponds again. Calm ponds again. You know what? This is not something that's mystical anymore. We're starting to see it everywhere. It's rare, but it's not that rare.
Well, isn't physics also doing research that kind of?
I think they're starting to overlap.
Or,
Yeah, they're starting to overlap physics and psychology. So it's great. These teachings, these ancient esoteric teachings, are coming to the forefront, and it's more accessible to a lot of us. The difference is you have to have discernment to be able to discern between the pop spirituality and real spirituality. Pop spirituality, instant enlightenment. Pay me $20,000, a week of seminar, you will be enlightened. Real spirituality, lots of practice.
There's a community in India called the Oneness Community.
Yes.
They're guaranteed some level of enlightenment.
Oh, do they?
Well, you know what? I don't like to use the word enlightenment because it's a really loaded term.
And I don't like the term guaranteed.
It's a very loaded term. Because what is enlightenment? The Buddha is not even defining it. It's the end of suffering. That's it. So you figure out what you're suffering with, and if that ends, there you go.
There's nothing left there.
Yeah, that works, right? I like that. It's practical. It works. Okay, we'll have a little bit of washroom break. Come back, we'll sit, and then we'll call it a day.